Human rights for all. This is a very intelligent short article, in my opinion. This points out that, I'm going to read this one set of words written by a woman, so intelligent. While governments have been obsessed, governments like the U.S., have been obsessed with the threat of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq and elsewhere, they have allowed the real weapons of mass destruction, injustice and impunity, that is, people who do terrible things and have no reason to fear any punishment. It won't happen. Poverty, discrimination and racism, religious as well as racial. The uncontrolled trade in small arms, which means bad people can get arms and hurt so many people. Violence against women and abuse of children to go unaddressed. Our hypocrisy, our self-deception. Irene Kahn is this woman's name. I don't know her, I guess, but boy, I couldn't agree more. The real danger in this world is not weapons of mass destruction. The real dangers are these things. I would focus on just one of them, violence against women. An article I read and kept, though I can't find, I've looked for it, written about 7 years ago in a Newsweek magazine, which I kept. I will find that thing. The title story was The War Against Women. And the article after article, because it was probably about a 12-page article, in that magazine told about the deterioration of women's rights and women's possibilities in a world that really is very violent against women. The word misogynism comes to mind. Misogynism, M-I-S-O-G-Y-N, hatred of women. Now, that's just a small point in this article, but I think it's a good one that we should look at a little more clearly. Really, I think men should consider the possibility that all men, I think this is true, have some misogynism in them, in us. Every one of us, no exception. No exception. This is expressed grossly by rape campaigns in many countries, Bosnia, Kosovo, what the Serbs did in those places, Saddam Hussein. It really has become a major method of control of male populations to rape their women, and so that men fear their women might be raped. But I'm getting off the track here a little bit. Misogynism. In Korea, we had that movie 2 years ago, Memory of Murder, the serial killer of women there. Of course, the U.S. has produced many such monsters. I don't know of any serial woman killer. Have you ever heard of a woman who has been a serial killer, who has killed man after man after man? I don't think so. Every culture has produced serial killers of women. They are simply the most obvious manifestation, in my view, of what I would call misogynism. The belittling, disparagement of women, the objectification of women that popular culture is guilty of. That is, women become sex objects, objects of not taken seriously as people. Your culture, my culture, all American culture especially is guilty of this, but the world is now American culture. This is simply true. And so women, for a woman to exist in such cultures, a woman must make herself attractive and sexually attractive and available, and the object of interest or excitement of men, including their own husbands, or men just go elsewhere. Okay. In between these two extremes, the one so serious, serial killers, and the terrible things they do to women, the stories are just so sickening of what has happened to to many women. By the way, a side note on that. The most obvious cases are these men who hate and fear prostitutes. And so these men have this moral, what should we say, are on this moral crusade against women, against prostitutes. And that was the case of that Memory of a Murder, of Murders, the Korean movie. Those women all wore red, and I think some at least had been prostitutes. I assume they were. Anyway, this is a footnote to this article, but that possibility disturbs me a lot. The possibility that all men are misogynists to some degree. Now, this is a possibility that no man wants to take seriously, and no woman wants to take seriously either. And I see this refusal almost to take it seriously, even in myself. I'm trying to face it in myself, and trying to see the various forms that it takes. I think all men should take it seriously. All of us should take it seriously, and I think all women should take it seriously too. And it's a good starting place. The horrible things that men do to women in this world. Okay, men do horrible things to men too. But maybe you'll say the problem is not misogyny, but misanthropy. That is, people hate people, or at least when we have power over people, we do some pretty terrible things. Okay, back to our immediate topic. Abuse of children, that is, the child labor, the exploitation of women and children as labor forces. Pretty terrible. Okay, what else? Well, some of these things I've already dealt with in the other article, hunger and poverty, for example, discrimination against groups. Since I'm talking about this, I'll expand this. There was a movie about a year ago, which was not a great movie at all, but it contained some very disturbing things. The movie was Something of the Sun? Bruce Willis. Something of the Sun. Anyway, Bruce Willis plays a special Navy SEAL guy, special forces, and a group of them, maybe 10 or 15 of these American, very highly trained guys, are sent into Nigeria, because in Nigeria the Muslims were taking over. They had kidnapped and killed the king, and Muslim militia, basically, pretty well trained, all over the country, had gone on a killing rampage against Christians. My first reaction to this, we see some terrible things that they did. On the other hand, we know that the Serbs, Christians, did almost the exact same things to the Muslims in Bosnia, in Kosovo, and other places. So I'm not aiming my criticisms at the Muslims. What the Christians did to the Muslims in those countries, the Muslims did to Christians in Nigeria at this time. But it was so brutal. The killing, the form of killings was so terrible, and it was shown in this movie, this Bruce Willis movie. And that's the part of the movie that is most memorable, the only part, in fact. What can be done about such hatreds, that wear religion for a shield, that are carried out in the name of religions, absurdly? Of course, it has nothing to do with religion. The Muslims who claim that this is for religious reasons are hypocrites and monsters. The Christians who claim that these actions are for religious reasons are hypocrites and monsters. I'd say that to their faces and let them think what they want. And we all should say that to their faces. Anyway, these are the real problems of the world, I agree. These are the real weapons of mass destruction. Now, it's true, the distribution of nuclear weapons around the world is a very dangerous thing. And if we ever do have a nuclear war, it's a miracle, by the way, that we haven't. These weapons have been available now for 65 years, and we have never had a nuclear war except for those two that we dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. We can discuss that sometime, too. It's a miracle that we have never had a real nuclear war, that the Cold War began and ended without there being a nuclear war. It's a miracle. It gives us some reason to hope that we won't for a long, long time. Every human being, every government will think a long time before pushing that button. It's true, accidents happen, and we've had movies about such things, the accidental pushing of buttons. But, back to human rights. What can be done about such terrible events as happened in the former Yugoslavia, as happened in Nigeria, as happened in Somalia, and places like that? I would say the only weapon against such things is the Americanization of the world. Now, there's a gloomy thought, but who else could put a stop to such things? Who else? Who else steps in? The Americans step in, and the British support them somewhat, and the French play their games, but mostly they are sympathetic. The Western powers mostly sympathetic. But I would say the Americanization of the world is about the only hope for the reduction of most of those problems. Can you think of a better solution? Religion, maybe? Please. Cooperative, the UN, maybe? Please. No, the UN is Americanization anyway. Let's face it. The UN is a branch of Americanization. For better or worse, that's what the UN is. For the reduction of many of these terrible, terrible things, I see no other solution than the Americanization of the world. A gloomy conclusion, I admit. But do you have a better one?
Human rights. 1. What does author Irene Kahn consider the real weapons of mass destruction? 2. What is misogynism? 3. What possibility should all men consider? 4. What has become a method of controlling male population in several countries? 5. What did the Korean movie Memory of Murder document? 6. What has every culture produced? 7. What are some examples of misogyny? 8. What is the only way a woman can exist in today's society? 9. What is the most obvious cases of misogyny in men? 10. How are children violated around the world? 11. What did a Bruce Willis movie depict? 12. What is amazing about our nuclear weapons? 13. What is the only weapon against terrible human rights violations? 14. What is good about Americanization?